I think we already know who the Tsaritsa is gonna be, but I might as well yap about who I want them to be instead, and which pretty boy is gonna be the first Cryo Archon as well. Hey guys, what's up? Aru. It's that time again after every region, predicting another set of characters from Honkai Impact that I think is going to take the seat of Cryo, the Tsaritsa. But this video is also going to include who the first Cryo Archon is going to be. The reason being, the Tsaritsa is a lady, and from the Moon event we know that the first Cryo Archon, the Belly Tsar, is a man. So I think we might get a similar duo or maybe trio from Fontaine, but this time it's about ice. This video will include a quick rundown over each character that may or may not be the Cryo Archon, a quick dip into their lore, personalities, and appearances within Hoyo games, manga, and the visual novels, as well as a speculation segment on why they would fit as the Tsaritsa and the Belly Tsar. Now I highly suggest you watch my Snaznaya video first so you can get a general introduction for what Snaznaya, its god, and people are. But this video is in no way related to that one in any way. Timestamps will of course be down below for each possible Archon, so comment who you think it's gonna be or if there are characters from other Hoyo games that you think would be a better fit. But before we talk about the first character, I want to give you guys a quick TLDR on who the god of Cryo is and what we know so far. The Tsaritsa was first instituted as the Cryo Archon sometime between the Archon War and the Cataclysm after the first Cryo Archon's death. The first Cryo Archon, known as the Belye Tsar and his extant followers, the Snowland Fae, were once dignitaries of the court in the Zapolyarny Palace, still remain within Teyvat today, likely on Hisi Island in Nod-Krai. Based on the events regarding the Tsaritsa's ascension, it seems like the Belye Tsar died because of a conflict with the Abyss, an event that left the Tsaritsa deeply changed and following the Cataclysm made her cut all ties with the rest of the world, including what seems like a close friend, Barbatos, which we'll talk about why later, and waging a war against Celestia, with the main quote from the Travail teaser about the Tsaritsa shouldering everything and guiding her people for them. I mentioned in my Snaznaya video that there are multiple ways to translate this, but that's the best interpretation I've made, which connects her past, her current role, her duty to Snaznaya, and her war with Celestia. The key pieces of lore about the Tsaritsa is the Shivada gemstone, Dainzif and Travail, and Zhongli's quote about her theorized ideal of love. The Shivada gemstone states, "Sorry to also have you shoulder the grievances of the world. Since you could endure my bitter cold, you must also have the desire to burn. Then burn the old world for me." The following are going to be from Dainzif on her war with the Divine and Zhongli on her ideal of love respectively.
She is a god with no love left for her people, nor do they have any left for her. Her followers hope only to be on her side when the day of her rebellion against the Divine comes at last.
Indeed, these are decorations used in the rite of parting. The 7 kites represent the 7. The design of this kite displays a firm grasp on the cyclicality and eternity so dear to the Electro Archon. These markings of tree and leaf pay due honor to wisdom and the passage of time. All this on a single kite. Truly astonishing. Justice flows across the surface of the waters. War rages like a flame, as does that which the Cryo Archon once... Yes. These details are masterfully done.
Something else worth noting is the transfer of the Divine Throne. Having 2 different beings, Tsaritsa and Tsar, could be like Makoto and A, siblings but different people who transferred authority to someone other than themselves, which is different to simply passing it on to another version of themselves like Rukkhadevata to Kusanali. Fontaine's different passing of the throne from dragon to god to then dragon is also possible, but we don't know if the Belye Tsar is a dragon or a different god yet. Or maybe a rise in power like Natlan, humans rising up to become Archons through selection and compatibility with the sacred flame. But this time it's the Tsaritsa rising in power for the Belye Tsar. Sibling or familial Archonhood are more likely due to the old order of Snaznaya still being present instead of being replaced completely. The only power we've seen that could be related to the Cryo Archon is the encasing of ice we see in Winter Night's Lazo. The blizzard in Snaznaya could also be from her, similar to the Shogun's storm near Inazuma, but for now it's not confirmed. Now with all that primer set and ready, let's talk about the theorized character since 1.0. We all know that Beonya is going to be the Tsaritsa. I mean, she just has to at this point. We already have Mei for Electro, and Kiana is probably somewhere in Celestia or in outer space. But why exactly is Beonya the best candidate? Her name is already Russian, so that puts her up front and center. Her name, Beonya Zaychik, means armor bunny in Russian, and she was born in Siberia, which has the coldest region in the world, Yakutia. If that's not enough origin lore to make her the Tsaritsa, then I don't know what does. As for her backstory, Beonya's parents allegedly died when she was a child, with her father dying first. Remember this detail for the Belyid Tsar later. She was then raised as a sniper at a young age, told to assassinate Kokolya, which didn't work, and then became her foster mother in an orphanage. But this orphanage was also experimenting with Honkai energy, which led to Beonya being a test subject, gaining the power to use Honkai energy, levitation, and using special weapons. But this came at the cost of losing her emotions and ability to walk. This is where the theory that the Tsaritsa is a vegetable in her throne without any love left, if you were wondering. But within Honkai Impact, she was able to get her emotions and her ability to walk again after gaining the core of reason, which turned her from this into this, the Hersher of Reason. Sorry if I skipped a bunch of details here because it would take too long. Her personality is very logical and calculative, acting much like a cold leader, which is perfect for an Archon with no love left. She sympathizes with Wendy, which is basically where Venti came from, who was also unable to walk. Taking Snezhnaya's current lore, both Venti and the Tsaritsa would have been fairies or sprites before they became Archons, which I'll talk about later in the Belyid Tsar segment. Something interesting about Beonya in Honkai Impact is her evolution from reason to truth, which stemmed from her refusal to blindly follow inherited ideals. Now, as the Hersher of Reason, she carried on Welt Yang and Welt Joyce's legacy, but it wasn't until she began questioning authority, trusting her own choices, and embracing emotions over cold logic that she transformed into the Hersher of Truth. Her awakening wasn't triggered by destruction, rather by clarity, choosing to protect, rebuild, and define her own future instead of following the legacy of others. The perfect ideal to lose and regain again as the Cryo Archon in Genshin. Much of her design, color schemes, and more importantly, the Pale Flame set, which highlights the original order from Snezhnaya, the Pale Star. Robot mechs, which also fits with Snezhnaya as the most advanced region. Her personality, name origins, and backstory perfectly fits the role of an Archon with no emotions and is solely focused on her duty, who is likely unable to walk and has to use robotic enhancements. And honestly, who wouldn't want the Tsaritsa inside of a Gundam Razor? Beonya pulling up to Snezhnaya in a cosmic mech with particle blades and a cold stare? Instant C6 pull for me. Everyone went wild for Scaramucci's mech, so why not give us the full Gundam Queen treatment? It would also tie directly into Snezhnaya's technology, the Puppet Tech A and Catherine uses, and all the ancient mechanical things we see in Tevat. With space and interworld travel already confirmed as canon since 1.0, there's no reason not to explore that frontier through someone like Beonya. For those hoping for taller models, Silverwing X also works, and we can even include her similar origins from Honkai Star Rail. And just as a special mention, it would also give room for Seele, the Olenieva twins, which Escoffier seems to look like already from her tail alone, as well as Sinmal and Kokolya to be part of Snezhnaya too. Heck, maybe Kokolya is the Tsaritsa. Seele specifically is also a good pick due to her design relating to the Pale Flame set, but I'm betting on her being part of the Abyss or the Lightkeeper faction due to her quantum element and dual personality with Veliona. Another special mention is Bianca Aitegina, or Durandal, simply because of her white and blue battle suits, Bright Knight Excelsis, meaning highest degree, and Palatinus Equinox, meaning female royalty and equal night and day, which is honestly close to whenever the Moon Sisters meet the Morning Star if you follow the Moon Sister lore. If Beonya truly becomes the Tsaritsa, then her journey from Hersher of Reason to Hersher of Truth would be Cryo and Snezhnaya's symbolic arc, from frozen preservation to conscious clarity. This also recontextualizes the Fatui Harbingers. What if they're all failed seekers of truth instead? We've already seen the level of faith that the Harbingers have, so maybe this is a revelation for all of Snezhnaya in the story. Because we know that there was a previous Cryo Archon and that it was a male, we can also theorize who they would be. Now, I know that the Cryo Archon already died, but that doesn't mean that they could come back in another form. The Hydro Dragon was supposed to be dead, but Nuvolette appeared in Fontaine, and I'm sure the female demographic of Genshin wouldn't mind another male god/Archon as well. Now bear with me here because it's really close to Beonya's backstory from Honkai. If the first Cryo Archon once had Snowland Fae in Snezhnaya, then theoretically he would have created the Snowland Fae, or that he would also be one. Then that would mean that the Snowland Fae are Cryo Oceanids. Being Cryo Oceanids, that would mean that they were children of the Belyid Tsar. Not only would this mean that the first Snowland Fae to be created would be the Belied Tsar, that would also mean that the Belied Tsar is the Tsaritsa's father. Based on the Long Night artifact set, the Lightkeepers were given the role of protecting Nodcry by a Frost Moon priestess. But at the same time, it was also the Tsaritsa who they vowed their oath to long ago. That could mean that the Tsaritsa was also a Snowland Fae, and that the first Cryo Archon was the first Snowland Fae created after the fall of the Seelie and the Moon Sisters, as well as the fall of Hyperborea. Remember when I said that Beonya's parents died at a young age? Well, that is the perfect segue for her backstory to have the Belied Tsar as the first Cryo Archon as well. And the best character to be the Belied Tsar and have previous relations with Beonya is the previous wielder of the Core of Reason, Welt Yang, or Welt Joyce, depending on who you want. Yes, this entire video is actually about the Welt bloodline and not Beonya. I'm kidding. But Welt Yang is technically Beonya's father figure throughout her journey as the Cursor of Reason, and also served as a teacher and protector in her journey. And Welt Joyce revealed the history of the Core of Reason and also an important figure for Beonya. Making Welt Yang the Belied Tsar also fits with why the Tsaritsa would have changed after his death. The death of a father figure would be devastating to someone's daughter, and making her the Archon right after that and then going through the Cataclysm would traumatize her even more. Because we're taking cues from the creation of the first Snowland Fae being the first Cryo Archon, then becoming an Archon would be made as punishment for being created by humans in the first place. Similar to what happened with Egeria creating Oceanid humans, but this time it's the creations being punished instead. Knowing the weird ways that Celestia and the Shades work with their rules, it's not outlandish for them to do something like that. For example, Renova just wanted someone to bear the rule of death, equivalent to using her rule without killing Natlan's entire population. And Mawika or Capitana would have been perfect for that regardless of what happened next. So having the first Snowland Fae bear the sins of humans only to save them would have been something similar to both Natlan and Fontaine's prophecies and events. So now we've got the Belied Tsar as well falling to the abyss, and now Beonya has to shoulder whatever burden the Belied Tsar had, which would lead to her loss of emotions and be completely logical and cold. Welt Yang also means world in German and order or structure in Chinese philosophy, so it would fit perfectly with the Pale Star Order of Snezhnaya as well as what the moons were trying to do long ago. If you let me theorize even further, Welt Joyce could also be the Cryo Archon or the first Snowland Fae. But I'm betting on him being the mortal boy who fell in love with the first Seelie instead, where logic collides with love and is the origin of the god of love, Tsaritsa. That would mean that the Tsaritsa was the child of the mortal and the Seelie. Now that we've established the top pick for Tsaritsa and Tsar, it's time to take a simpler dive into the other possible pairings or combinations. The first is Anna Schariac and Owl, and they've been my top pick for why Tartaglia looks like Owl and Anna Schariac being the Tsaritsa. Although now that we know that the first Cryo Archon was a guy, this theory is basically debunked. But that doesn't mean that the Tsaritsa and child won't have a lover's dynamic as a Harbinger and an Archon. However, having a House Schariac opens up another can of worms which would also fit the inclusion of the Hexen Circle, the Sinners, and the Moon. Anna Schariac was born into the prestigious House Schariac, where a lineage of powerful female warriors often bearing holy blood, fighting as divine maidens called Valkyries. She trained to fight the Honkai from childhood, and by the age of 12 she became a Valkyrie, and at 16 she was prompted to A rank and made deputy leader of the Snow Wolf Squad. Later on, a Honkai incident in Manila, yes, that Manila, led to the death of Anna Schariac. Under intense emotional and environmental pressure, Anna awakened as the fifth Hersher, the Hersher of Ice. She lost control and tragically killed her squad mates. Although she briefly regained awareness, she could no longer speak. Owl, which is the lookalike of Tartaglia, a close companion who believed in her humanity, tried to help her escape, but she lost control again and fatally stabbed him. Not only would this fit as the Moon Sister being one of the Schariacs, but also the Tsaritsa being the last Moon Sister that ceased to turn. Basically being a living Moon Sister that stopped fulfilling her role as a Frost Moon and then became the Tsaritsa. And apart from Child being Owl, it also opens the possibility of Otto Apocalypse being the first Cryo Archon, or worse, one of the Sinners. Dane's lip is already blonde, so maybe his brother Vedderfolnir is Otto instead. The other combination that works with Love and Lost that fits with both Honkai and Genshin is Kallen being the Tsaritsa and Otto being the first Cryo Archon. With this combination, it would be a reverse telling of events. Kallen Kaslana was a noble Valkyrie from House Kaslana, also raised to protect humanity from the Honkai. Fiercely idealistic and selfless, she fought Honkai corruption within Schicksal, an organization fighting against the Honkai, and defied its leaders to save innocent lives. After falling in love with Yae Sakura and trying to seal the Honkai within the black box, Kallen was captured and sentenced to death. Even in her final moments, she still chose to protect a child from a Honkai beast and dying as a hero. Her death would leave a permanent scar on the man who loved her the most. Now, Otto Apocalypse was a genius and member of the House Apocalypse who dedicated his life to one goal, bringing Kallen back. If you haven't noticed, I've mentioned the 3 houses that fought against the Honkai. Now, if I could be a little crazy, the 3 moons could have taken cues from the 3 houses: Schariac, Kaslana, and Apocalypse. Each of the houses all have prominent characters within the game that look very much alike too, making them the perfect fit for the moons. But I digress. After witnessing Kallen's death, Otto abandoned morality and committed unthinkable acts in pursuit of resurrection, manipulating history, science, and war. He eventually became the overseer of Schicksal and used every resource available to try and rewrite fate. In the end, Otto creates a timeline where Kallen survives, sacrificing his own life to see her live. In Honkai Impact, Otto did everything to save Kallen, going through multiple bubble worlds and even creating an alternate reality where Kallen survived at the cost of his life. So out of one of these worlds that he altered, he created a world where Otto died instead of Kallen, not through changing an arm as well as a badass savior dive like this, which is the craziest way to alter fate by the way, but instead through this reverse ending. Kallen survives and becomes the Cryo Archon, Tsaritsa, while Otto, the first Cryo Archon, is the one who dies. Instead of Otto obsessively chasing Kallen's memory, it's Kallen who seals her heart in ice after losing Otto. Her ideals remain, but her love is gone. The Tsaritsa's no love left isn't a sign of cruelty anymore. It's the grief of someone who once loved deeply and never again allowed herself to feel that pain. Snezhnaya, shaped by this loss, becomes a nation built not just on order, but frozen memory, which fits with why Senora was frozen after she died, with the main cause of Otto's death being through the abyss and leaving Karen to carry on in his stead, from Tsar to Tsaritsa. What's interesting here is Otto spent 500 years trying to bring Kallen back. So maybe in this world, Kallen would do the same. Having this iteration of the world would mean that Tevat is indeed part of the bubble universes in the Honkaiverse. Now, how Otto wouldn't have chosen this world where Kallen survives is likely because Kallen would die abruptly too, instead of living a peaceful life all throughout, which is what he planned. Which would mean the Tsaritsa is going to die, but I honestly hope she doesn't. Maybe a little sense of loss and urgency where she dies in one patch, only to be revived later would be enough for me. When it comes to weapons, all characters mentioned wielded various divine keys, converted Herrscher cores, and anti-Honkai weapons. Beonya and the Welt boys' core of reason, later evolving her to the Herrscher of truth, lets her reconstruct and eventually create technology through pure will, fitting her as a logic-based creator and lost ancient technological Archon. Anna Schariac's core of ice gives her cryo control, perfectly aligning with the concept of Cryo Archon through cold blizzards in Snezhnaya. Kallen Kaslana's Oath of Judah serves as a holy relic or ritual weapon, binding enemies and representing divine justice. Otto Apocalypse might have had a similar judgment of Shamash, symbolizing the Shivada gemstone's desire to burn away the old world for rebirth. Although Otto used the Void Archives as well, its overwhelming knowledge places it closer to Celestia or the Abyss, beyond even the reach of any Archons or Tevatian. So maybe the Hexen Circle or the Sinners would have this instead. And there we go, who the Tsaritsa could be and why, as well as some theories on the first Cryo Archon's identity. I hope you guys enjoyed this wild theory on who the Tsaritsa is gonna be, if it isn't already clear that it's going to be Beonya anyway, but that's also why we theorize multiple characters as possible candidates. Comment below how crazy and off the walls this theory is, tell me who you think is gonna be the Tsaritsa and the Beonya Tsar, and let me know if you guys want a more in-depth video on the other characters apart from Beonya XP, or maybe even a theory on the Moon Sisters being the 3 houses of Honkai Impact. I wouldn't mind making an entire Anna Schariac video either, so please let me know down in the comments below. But that's gonna be it for now. I'll see you guys in the next video, yeah? As always, like, comment, if you enjoyed, subscribe, and develop more of my ramblings, and stay mad, theorists. Bye!